The scariest sound that you can hear in the bush. And for me, I would say panicked elephants. It's quite a distressing noise. Loud, high-pitched trumpeting, and when there's a whole herd of them going for it, when they're really alarmed, it's a very, very terrifying noise. It's very, very loud, and like I said, that high-pitched, shrill can get you into a state of panic very, very quickly. Dave, what's your most scary sound out here?
The rumble gets me.
The rumble, interesting. So the Ellie rumble, more of a also quite a prehistoric noise that you would expect to hear from something like a dinosaur. That gets Dave's heart beating. Wonderful. Well, one sound that certainly doesn't make me scared is that of lions roaring, and hopefully Ralph and the Nkuhuma Pride will be able to provide you that a little bit later on this evening. But for now, you back to him.
Yes, absolutely. We would love to hear these lions roaring a little bit later, and that's why I'm sitting and waiting with them in anticipation. I think I'm going to probably spend the whole of my drive here, and I just want to respond a little bit more on the question that I had earlier from Antoine, asking me about that tuft on the end of their tail. Now, there's one flicking his tail around. Now, it is used obviously to help each other locate in the long grass, but another reason is also with a counterbalance force, very similar to that of cheetah. When they move in one direction at high speed, they throw that tail in the opposite direction, and it does help to offset their center of gravity, making for a much easier chase. Now Senzo's just scanning through the grass there, and I just asked him to go a little bit closer on that little flower, that orangey coloured flower there, very aptly named a lion's eye, which is called as such because of the lovely amber glow that it has, resembling that of a lion's eye. And I think more so this lion that we have in particular in the Nkuhuma Pride, called Amber Eyes, and that's a little lion's eye flower, and nicely situated right in amongst where the lions are all taking a snooze again. So they've all gone flat out once more after they were a little bit active when that warthog came along, but maybe it was just because they saw it and they were opportunists as ever. But we've also had quite a few vultures move into the area. I'm sure they maybe have had difficult pickings this afternoon. Maybe there hasn't been much meat around, and they've spotted these lions and just thought they'd come and hang around and hope for the best, which isn't a bad tactic, because if these lions are hungry, there generally will be a bit of meat going around. So we are just going to keep sitting with them. It's always nice just to wait and see with the lions. I just want Senzo just to go over my shoulder here, and you can see these vultures that have landed in the tree. There was about 4 or 5 of them, white-backed vultures. As I said, they all started coming down, and the lions indicated that to us by picking their heads up and looking up to the sky, and they were probably almost thinking, oh really, can't you go and find your own meat? But very good tactic that from the vultures. Just come and hang around a very big group of predators, and sooner or later there's going to be some meat on the go. So not such a bad way of hoping for the best. But there's a few clouds, so it's still nice and cool. We're going to stay here. I think that's pretty much us for the drive. We're not going to move anywhere because there might be some excellent action here soon, although it doesn't look like it at the moment. But we're going to keep looking at these flat cats, and in the meantime, let's go over to Tristan, who also got a pretty flat cat as well.
I do indeed. I don't think we're going to see too much movement just yet. I feel like it's going to be a very similar situation to what we had yesterday, which is when Tingana slept most of the afternoon away and then eventually got up and went up into the tree just before sort of drive ended. So I think we're going to have a very similar situation with him. It's worth being patient because it's amazing to watch leopards climb trees and sort of how agile and acrobatic they can be to get up in there. So sitting with a sleepy cat for a little bit is not the worst thing. Also, we've done a little bit of a loop around. There's not really too much else that was going on. I had sound for a few ellies somewhere on the western side of Djuma, which I think were the ones Scott saw earlier. So might as well just sit here and enjoy spending a bit of time with Tingana. Like I say, it's so often we just see him for brief glimpses and we get him moving through thickets and he can be tough to keep up with. That's quite cool to watch the grass move with his breath. Look at that. That's quite funny. I like that. Anyway, we often don't get to spend a lot of time with him, so it's nice just over the last kind of 2 days just to have sat with him and enjoyed the company of him and see what he gets up to. Of course, this is not normal Tingana. We know Tingana normally moves around quite a bit, but when he's got food like this, it just seems like a good chance to sit and enjoy and just kind of admire what he looks like. He's a beautiful cat at the end of the day, and unfortunately I find that he's villainized a lot by people and he's given a lot of trouble, but he's actually a really pretty cat, and he's a perfect example of a big male leopard out of these savanna areas in the northeastern corner of South Africa. These big brute individuals that have fed on a lot of protein, and that's why they've grown to the sizes that they have. And he's just in fantastic condition at the moment as well. There's not really any scratches or scrapes on him. It seems as though that leg wound is healed, that one that we saw a few months ago, and so he seems as though he's in really great shape considering he's starting to age now. And like I say, it's just nice to admire the beauty of his coat and what he actually looks like. I was talking to Virm now as well, and it's maybe with Ralph we can have a look at it just now, but if you look at the size of his paws in relation to his body, we were just talking about how a leopard paw, even though it's big, is not nearly as impressive as those lion paws. Now, I know a lion is a much bigger individual, but it just seems as though the proportion of paw versus length of leg and thickness of leg is just so much bigger in a male lion, particularly something like the Birmingham boys. They get these big feet, and it's amazing just to see how big a lion's foot is. And now when you sit, because this morning I sat with the lions during our rehearsal, and now I sit with Tingana and I see his paws, and it's actually, you realize just how much smaller they are than those male lions. But we are sitting with our spotted cat. Like I said, we're going to be patient, but it seems as though Steph has managed to find something spotty of his own.
We definitely have found a spotty hippo giraffe, as that was communicated to me by the radio at the moment. That is a big, very, very mature common giraffe. And I know he's a male from this distance because of those very robust ossicones or horns that he has. And in profile, when he turns his face in a little bit, you'll notice that every sort of piece of exposed bone on the giraffe's head, so the bridge of the nose, just above the eyes, on the back of the head, on the cheekbones, the giraffe, there we go, have a look at that when he puts his head sideways. The male giraffe never stop depositing calcium onto their skulls, and by the time that giraffe gets old like this one is now, he's not, by no means is he an old man at the moment. A very healthy, robust male giraffe. Moving off. And they use this overdeveloped head with all the knobs on it to basically bash one another into submission. The stronger giraffe winning the mating rights over any particular females in the area, and male giraffe like that, healthy male giraffe like that, will basically be moving from one herd of female giraffe to another. And so you can go weeks here where you don't see a single giraffe. I mean, there are times here where it just seems like we haven't seen giraffe for weeks, possibly even months, and then all of a sudden a herd of giraffe will arrive, female giraffe, and in tow will be all the males again. Let's see if we can get another view of this giraffe as he disappears. No, he's moved off. He's obviously got the scent of some females into his nostrils and has decided to move on. Yeah, no luck there, unfortunately. Sama, you'd like to know what noise giraffe make when they're alarm calling. Sama, giraffe have got a funny, actually quite a wide range of sound that they can make. They virtually they're virtually mute at any other time except when they're under a high amount of stress. So when they're being caught by something, they make a noise, or in defense of their baby, they also make quite a lot of noise. And it ranges from quite a high-pitched scream to a hum, and zookeepers and giraffe minders that have worked in zoos and in animal care centers even report that giraffe make a very loud humming noise when they are content and relaxed. But out here, I've never really heard a giraffe's full range of sounds. I've heard them make their growling defense noise when they are defending their babies, and they make quite a distressing noise when they are being caught by a lion. But I haven't heard that hum at all. All right, you're off to Scott. I'm sure he's got something to show you.
Yes, we found another bird's nest, a different one to the type that Steph found earlier. There's no lichen that's been used on this nest, but there has been some spider webs used, especially around this top rim to connect it to the various support branches. And isn't it awesome to see how clever these birds are, or the various types of birds are, in the way they build their nests? Now, I'm not entirely sure what bird is responsible for this. It could be a chagra. It seems quite chagra-like in appearance, but quite a few birds have quite similarly shaped nests. What's interesting is it looks like the internal kind of knit material, the basket that it's made, seems like it's a kind of root. So you wonder how the bird went about pulling these roots out of the ground and then weaving them into this perfect basket. Now, I'm not sure if this nest is very new. It could have been from a previous season. They do get abandoned, and some trees are just not the right trees. Let me just show you why. When the wind blows, even though the nest is creating a basket in a big storm, and I mean, I'm not really pushing the tree very hard, you could see how baby chicks or eggs could come tumbling out of this nest. And sadly, I mean, quite a few of the nests that I've followed in my time, or at least try to keep track of in my time out here, they very often don't make it. So something I think we probably don't realize as much as we should with birds and their nests is that they don't have the biggest success rate, be it a storm coming in and blowing chicks out, or possibly just the misfortune of having a predator like a mongoose or a snake detecting it. Very good. Well, hopefully we'll be able to find another bird's nest with some eggs in it. But in the meantime, we are sending you back to Tristan and Tingana. I wonder if Tingana's still being tickled by the grass.
Well, Scotty, he is still just sitting, sleeping. He's not really doing too much at the moment. I suppose he is awake at least, and he's got his head up and he's repositioned himself completely, and that's because he had a biting fly going in his ear that drove him crazy. There was tail flicking and biting and ear flicks like you can see now, and eventually he just got fed up and stood up and turned around and then lay back down quite promptly once again. Dula Ann, who's 5 years old. Dula Ann, you want to know, will Tingana break the tree because he's so fat? Well, Dula Ann, there's a very, very distinct possibility that once he gets up into that tree on those smaller branches that he might break them and fall down. Although the tree is quite strong, and where he's put it, he's got a chance that it is quite sort of thick there, and so even though he is fat and he is full, it's a situation where that branch should hold on to him. But it wouldn't surprise me. I have seen a male leopard, and actually Tingana before, step on one of these smaller, thinner branches and actually break it and fall out of the tree. So it's possible. He is very fat and he is very full, so he's going to be a lot heavier, and it's possible that he might just come tumbling out of the tree. Lisa Marie, you're wondering if the small paws help leopards climb trees better than lions with the bigger paws? Well, no, not really. It's the fact that they're lighter helps them climb trees better than what the lions do. They're a much smaller cat. They are developed in a way to climb, so they've evolved to be incredible climbers. They have big, thick, wide chest areas that are incredibly muscular and strong, and lions have evolved slightly differently. So the paws have really got not too much to do with the fact that they climb. you'll find that even those big paws, lions do climb quite well. You'll find lions getting up into a tree is not the difficult part. It's coming back down again for lions, and that's why they don't really do as much climbing. And we saw with Ralph just now, the lion going up and falling out of the tree. It's the exact same thing with with lions going up. That's why they try and avoid it. And so with leopards, they've been designed to be able to come down a lot easier, and so it's much easier for them to climb, and why they do it a lot more. But the paw size doesn't really have too much to do with it. At the end of the day, the lions actually probably have an advantage in that their paws, being so big, are able to get those claws deep into the tree, and the power is there to get the grip to pull themselves up on these sort of very vertical trees. It's just that they weigh a lot more. Right, now Tingana is still going to relax for a while longer. Hopefully he is going to get up and hopefully not break the branches in the tree, but if he does, we will be here to see it. And while we do that, let's go back to Scott, who seems to have made an I can't speak right now, but he's got something that he's found on the ground that is no longer with us.
I've turned into a buffalo, everyone. Not a very healthy one, but a buffalo nonetheless. And good to have you back. The reason why I thought I'd call you guys back is to just discuss some interesting things about how the skull of an animal, excuse my hat, I had to shift it for the horn to fit nicely, or the skull to fit nicely. But what I wanted to mainly show you is something that I discussed this morning, and it's how the horn of a buffalo and most of all of the antelope out here in Africa have just got a keratin sheath. And you can clearly see here that the brown part of the horn that you see is very, very thin. And if I turn this side around, you can see where the bony inner has been snapped off and broken out. So this bony inner will be solid right the way up to the tip of the horn. This poor buffalo was a youngster, probably just over a year old, when possibly some lions got a hold of it. You can see that not much has gone to waste. They managed to crush through the skull, probably the hyena, eat out the brain. Also parts of the nose were chewed off, and it's testament to how effective hyena are in really breaking down as much of the bony materials that the other predators like the leopard and lion cannot do. And it's not unlikely that hyena are going to swoop into the area where Tingana is now, possibly later this evening, once he's finished off all of the easier parts of the impala that he can eat, and once those larger bones drop down that he simply cannot process, the hyenas will make the most of them. Very good. Sorry, buffalo. You had a short career here in Africa. Very good. Well, speaking of hyenas and the useful jobs that they do out in Africa, let's send you back to another one of Africa's cleanup crew with Ralph.
Yes, talking about one scavenger to another, these vultures have all started pulling in now, and it's almost like they know something we don't. But I do think that the reason behind this could be with the fact that we've got quite a lot of cloud cover, and as vultures do, they like to catch the thermals with the rising air, and with it being quite cloudy, it might be difficult for them today. So they might be just putting all their eggs in one basket and saying, I think the best is just to hang around these lions as opposed to surveying the area, which is becoming a bit difficult today with it not being so hot. Obviously, vultures can soar up to massive distances up into the sky, sometimes over 12,000 meters, which is at roughly at about 25 to 30,000 feet. So it is extremely high, and they can, from 1 kilometer or at about just under a mile, they can see a 6-meter object or a 12-foot object. So it's quite incredible, that vast eyesight of theirs. Now, over here, the lions are still lying up, doing what lions do best, but those vultures are still waiting patiently, as are we, that we could potentially get a lovely group family roar before they move off and potentially start a hunt. And we'll also be around if that happens. So I've just also put all my eggs in one basket, as have the vultures, and hoping that we get some action around these lions. So the vultures aren't the only ones relying on the lions moving and hopefully going on a hunt. Now, this Nkuhuma pride, there are a couple of individuals that have got some pretty nasty gashes on them. One had it on its back end. It was one of the sub-adults, and then one of the females has got quite a nasty gash on one of her feet. Now, I'm not too sure what that is all about. Potentially around a bit of a kill site. You know that lions can be quite aggressive towards each other when they feed, and it's almost a little bit like every man for himself or every lioness for herself, and they do need to force their way in. Generally, after the males have fed, if they know anything about a kill, the lions will the male lions will come in and generally push the females off, or at least off to the side a bit, and they generally take the lion's share, as they say, and then the females would take after them. Now, we've got one of the males here of the Birmingham boys, and he's lying off just to the side there, as Senzo finds him. So I'm not sure where the other four are. Now, Umka, very good question that you ask there. Are there any other cats that have a big tuft on the end of their tail? Yes, Umka, and one in particular is that of the cheetah. And that is, as I mentioned before, a very big help in when they are on the chase at full speed, full tilt, and they're turning corners, moving from side to side. They throw that tail in the opposite direction to keep a low center of gravity and keep them centered. Otherwise, it would be easy for them to slip or fall over. So cheetahs are one that have got a very big tuft as that counterbalance. I'm thinking most of the cats actually do have a little bit of a tuft, but the caracal not so much. They're more of an ambush hunter, staying in the thickets. Leopard not so much, because also quite a similar sort of habits like a leopard. So it's more the long distance running cats that do it out in the plains, and that's in particular the cheetah and the lions with a nice big thick tuft on the end of the tail. So, and they also use it as a good fly swat. When there's lots of flies around, they do throw it and get rid of the flies. Now, I think Senzo has just mentioned that. There we go, that's lovely on the tip of the tail. Thanks, Senzo, for pointing that out. Alright, and it's lovely to see that their coats are fantastic looking at the moment, very clean. But speaking of hairy and coats, let's go over to Scott, who's got something else that's quite hairy.
Well, I've developed a monobrow since you left me. Since I got rid of that buffalo horn, I've also developed a skill of squinting. Ooh. And isn't this the most beautiful little caterpillar you've ever seen? It's got a serious hairdo, bright colors, and what I find so interesting about a lot of these animals is it's just the front 3 pairs of legs that are actually proper legs. The 4 pairs at the back, those are kind of fake legs really. They're just kind of modified adaptations that help it wriggle along like that. And we don't want to keep it from its bush that we found it on with some of its friends for too long. It's on a little bush willow tree, and we just took it off so that we could show you some better views of it. Now, let's just get it nicely back there. There we go, buddy. Back to where we left you. And they've been obviously nibbling on the leaves of this bush willow. Let me find a leaf for you here where you can actually see where they've gobbled it up. Here's a good one here, Dave. You can see how they've consumed quite a lot of that leaf. And you'll find a lot of caterpillars are host specific, so they will only feed on certain plants and bushes. Now, what's interesting here is that I sadly don't know what these caterpillars are going to turn into. And I know you had a beautiful visual of orange butterfly with Steph earlier. Who knows, maybe they'll turn into something like that, or maybe a nocturnal moth. But they are going to metamorphosize and transform into a flying animal. And isn't that absolutely fascinating? Imagine if our lives, we started off as kind of one creature and then turned up being another one by the time we were adults. I guess some of us probably do, just depending on, regarding our behavior. Some of us become more childlike as we get older, and some people follow the more traditional route of becoming more adult-like as you become older, more responsible. Not too sure which way I'm going yet. Cool. Well, we will be able to find out with a bit of research what it will turn into. So if any of you are wanting to do some homework, you can try and figure out what that is going to turn into. It'll be hugely useful for all of us. Otherwise, I'll try and do some research when I get back this evening. Very, very good. Well, we're going to continue moseying about, enjoying this cool breeze and a cool cloudy afternoon here on Djuma. And while we do that, we'll send you back to Steph.
I'm trying really, really hard to find a grey duiker. It's a mom grey duiker, which is one of the dwarf antelope here, with a tiny baby. Baby's only about as big as a rabbit, as a hare. And somewhere here, Mom took the baby. So somewhere here. Now, the baby's going to be reluctant to run. So I think they'll try and hide. That's going to be the first sort of defense for this little antelope. And I really, really want to show you a baby duiker. The last time we saw it was just here. Somewhere here. Feeling it's going to burst out of the bushes just in front of us. Most likely just gone there. This is where we last saw it, right here. Now, I've only ever seen a baby duiker once. And unfortunately it had a leopard attached to it at the time. So I haven't seen one in its natural environment. I'm hoping old Thumb's with us. Genre getting stuck on every bush that is here. Right, we're going to try and snoop around here a bit more. You're off to James and the rover.
Hello everybody, we are just... Look at Ronald's picture! Ronald has an elephant. Ronald has got a magnificent little herd of elephants heading towards him. I have placed him in harm's way somewhat. You can see that. They are a little suspicious of him because he probably smells like the cheap soap I used to wash myself before drive. Oh, what a magnificent picture that is. Isn't that gorgeous? They're all looking at him because he's odd. He's tiny though in comparison with him. There, if we cut to the other feed, you can see them walking past him, trying to avoid him. There, one's smelling him, just trying to decide if the smell of human being is anything to be worried about. Hello, Ronald. Oh, Ronald, you have just made some wonderful friends. There's a mini fang. See that? We've got mini fang there. That's the end of the herd of elephants. They're now going to have a drink. This is just very special indeed. Wasn't that great? I think that's fantastic stuff. Alrighty. Well, we can go forward now. Or should we stay where we can stay where we are? Let me turn Ronald around by turning on his power button, of course. No, Ronald's not working anymore. Oh no, there he goes. Right, you just enjoy watching those elephants, which is rather magnificent. And I'll get a rear end rover view of them. Isn't that special? So it's not even very hot today. They're all sitting there having a much longer drink than they did yesterday when it was blindingly warm. I'm just going to shift forward there, Ferg, because Ronnie is losing his signal slightly. This is Ronald's controller, everybody. Now we're all just kind of learning how this hosting / technical wizardry vehicle is working. And so I am very much appreciative for the patience that you show with us as we experiment with these various things. We'll stop over here. Just look at Minnie Fang over there. And you can see why I'm calling her Minnie Fang. She's got one of those recurved tusks. I don't believe it will ever be anything like the size of Fang's tusk. And you were all apparently saying how awesome this is. It was just very special to have them walking past him there. I think we need to disguise him. Scott disguised him yesterday quite nicely. I think we might have to do that again. We might even try and cover him in some kind of elephant dung, so that he smells like elephants, perhaps. I won't tell him that. He's out of earshot at the moment. And there we can see a shot of Ronald now. Oh, look at the baby. Little one. Tiny little thing having a drink there under his mum's belly. So just over a year old, you can see that, because he is taller than mum's belly. And just so safe and protected in amongst the legs of the herd. And I say this often, but it is astonishing to me how they never manage to stand on the little ones. I don't know how they do it, but somehow they do. There we have them now moving off. They've had a good drink. Sometimes, you know, they'll sit and drink for, well, not hours, but for a long time. And this particular time, much longer than yesterday's hot day. I was quite surprised by that. But you'll notice no swimming compared with yesterday. Now she's standing in that slightly defensive posture. That's Minnie Fang I'm talking about. Just, I think, because Ronald has moved up behind her. So if we cut to Ronald's feed, you can perhaps see where he is. There he is. He's just watching from the top of this little wall, and that's the picture he's got. Now it's very important, as I keep saying, and I will keep saying it, that we do our level best not to affect these animals' lives with our new technology. The point of the technology is not the technology itself, but much more to get a slightly different perspective of this magnificent ecosystem that we find ourselves in, but not in a way that in any way disturbs the animals around here. And I suppose much in the way as these animals have habituated to us in vehicles, so eventually I hope that they will just completely ignore something like Ronald. So I'm just going to let her, although I can see she's not particularly happy with his presence. We know, of course, that Ronald is absolutely no threat to her at all. So I'm just going to leave him there so that she can get a little bit used to him. She's very clearly the matriarch of this little herd, obviously their commander-in-chief. And she's just casting an eye towards him. I think his smell must be pretty odd as well. Yes. Tharadin, what a very nice question. Just as we watch Mum there hugging her little one to her, saying, don't go near that small robot thing. We don't know what it is. Tharadin, you say if baby elephants have a tough time learning to use their trunks, which of course they do, that is correct, do they have trouble drinking water? Yes, absolutely they do. And for that reason, they just plunge their whole faces into water when they want to drink. I mean, they'll get most of their water needs. Oh, what's going on there? There are a water buck running. Oh, I think it's just a male harassing a female, poor thing. There we go. That's a baby being harassed by that big male. Let's just watch this unfold. Tharadin, I'll get back to your question. He's about to catch her. She's made it away. It's lucky. Anyway, the elephants are slowly moving away. Tharadin, what they do is they just shove their whole faces below the surface of the water and drink. And there is Marvin, the matrice, moved. Ronald hasn't moved. I think it moved, but there were wild dogs around here earlier today. Perhaps they've scented them on the wind. I don't believe it's Ronald that caused them to move away that quickly, because he was completely still. Anyway, fascinating stuff here. And Tharadin, there's just one other aspect of your question. Of course, elephants lose their trunks. Remember, there are a few. Sometimes they get caught in snares. Hopefully, when we see them when we see them with their snapped off trunks, we hope that perhaps it's been a natural cause. But anyway, elephants that lose their trunks can still survive, can still drink water by drinking exactly like they did when they were infants. They just plunge their whole heads into the water, and in so doing manage to get enough of the water that they so desperately need every single day. Marvellous. Okay. Well, we will continue to find some things around here. I believe that Stefan has managed to elevate himself from the ground with some hymenopterids.
How awesome was that baby Ellie with his mom and chewing his trunk? But now another thing that's got some babies are these drop-tail ants. One of the more aggressive of the ant species around, and they are moving nests. And they are moving not just themselves, but all the baby ants as well. That's a baby that's being held. There's another baby right there. And that is the young ant that gets looked after. Young ants are treated like absolute gold. They bathed, they cleaned, they fed, they looked after, they carried around. And in this particular case, these ants are moving. Ants will move nests relatively often, and they do it for a variety of reasons, but it could just be because there's a rival ant clan that is trying to take over from them, or they're being preyed upon by some or other thing. You can see how they're all actually coming out here, out of the base of this leadwood here. And here's some more babies busy coming out. And all of them have got their abdomens pointed forward, stingers out. And these are different ants. These ants only look after babies. They're not there to defend the nest. That is left up to workers. These ants basically are just nursery workers. They're all female. All of the ants in an ant colony are female. They're virtually blind. They work on pheromones. And isn't this just absolutely amazing? I actually haven't been able to study this. It normally happens under the cover of darkness. This is really cool. These ants have got quite a strong sting. Not as strong as that wasp that we saw a little bit earlier on today, but definitely are capable of producing an uncomfortable array of bites and stings. With in fact the animal that stings the worst on the entire planet being a bullet ant. Let's see where we can... Here's the trail going down here. Here it's going here. Here it looks like their new nest is here. Underneath this. I must be honest with you, it doesn't bode well. Why would ants move their nest underground when they were in a leadwood tree, which is pretty much impervious to anything? I mean, right here they can be dug up by aardvarks, they can be dug up by pangolins. In the tree, nothing could get to them, including water. There's the Mulwati drainage line right here, and we're on the edge of December here, and this drainage line is apt to flood. And I think these ants are either trying to tell us something. After however many 100 million years on this planet, they're either telling us that this year is going to be a dry year and they're feeling quite comfortable to be here, or something else is happening over here. I don't know. Alright, why don't we go and have a look at Scott? He's also apparently looking at something small on the ground.
Yes, we are looking at something small, and I don't have the faintest idea what it is. But what I can tell you is they've got massive, massive mandibles. Who knows what those are designed to feed on? So, definitely going to be chomping down on some other small insects, I'm guessing, is what they're hoping for. And there's a whole bunch of them. It's not just these ones up at the top. As we move down these two little blades of grass, we'll realize that it's a whole family of brothers and sisters, and they've all fairly recently hatched. Here you can see all their eggs, and isn't that fascinating? Imagine being born into such a big family. I also wonder at what succession the eggs hatch. Does it take a few days for them all to hatch, or do they all hatch within a few hours of one another? Now, what is going to be wonderful is to do some more homework, just like I need to do on that caterpillar we saw earlier that is going to metamorphosize into some kind of other creature as it becomes more of an adult. These two are going to change into a very, very different beast, something with wings eventually, and they'll be able to fly off once they have got to that stage of their lives. But very, very interesting little creatures. I've never seen them before, and they kind of look like an antlion. They've got a very similar mouth part to an antlion, but they're certainly not antlions as far as I'm aware, unless at some point they're going to go down, burrow into the ground, and start acting more like one. Who knows? Maybe that will happen. Cool. Well, sounds like you guys had an awesome sighting with Ronald and the elephants, so I'm glad that you got some bugs kind of view angle of what it looks like to look up on an elephant. For now, though, we're going to be sending you back to Tristan and Tingana.
Well, Tingana has moved the sum total of about 1 meter at this stage. He got up and decided that he'll move just a little bit closer, so we're edging towards the tree. He's not sleeping now, which I suppose is a good thing. He's got his head up and he was watching some guinea fowl that walked past us just now. Every now and then he looks over towards us as well, just to kind of check around, and you can see the tummy almost gets squashed on one side for too long that he decides I can't do this anymore and just rolls over and then squashes the other side for a little bit. So slowly but surely he's moving his way around, and he's got these little favorite patches all over here as he kind of goes, and I'm sure he'll end up in the tree at some point. Now, Lady Starfire, you're wondering how often lions and leopards cross paths on Djuma itself. Well, Lady Starfire, that's a difficult question to answer in that a lot of the time we don't see what goes on during the middle of the night. So there's probably times where they cross into each other's paths a lot more than we actually witness. But in terms of witnessing lions and leopards together, not as much as you would think. It depends also on what leopards are around, what lions are around. At the moment, the Nkuhuma pride and Styx pride are so transient through Djuma that we really don't see them here for any length of time at all, and therefore we're not finding too much interaction between them and leopard. When you've got a situation where lions spend a lot of time in an area, you might find then there's a lot more of that process, particularly if we had a situation like now, if the Nkuhumas had to den on Djuma like they did last year when they were here for that number of days, and we've got Tundi on a den, you might find that the interaction between the two of them would be a little bit more frequent. But it's difficult to say. I mean, the last time I saw lion and leopard in the same sighting, or even remember, was the sighting, I think there was a sighting of Tumba, but I didn't see it, with the Styx pride, and prior to that it was little Hosanna that was with the Styx pride as well. But that's the last I've seen of lions and leopard interaction. It's been a long time since I've seen the two of them together. It happens in the west. I know they've seen a few recently as well, with lions kind of trying to steal kills and various other things, but it's not as common as you would think. So in fact, I haven't seen it, like I say, in the last probably 4 or 5 months. I haven't seen any lion-leopard interaction at all, which just goes to show that it's not as frequent as we think. There's a far higher chance of wild dog leopard than there is actually lions leopard, and the reason why is because wild dogs tend to spend a lot more time running through these blocks and through these thicker areas where leopards are often hiding out during the day, and they then get chased up into the tree, and we then see that interaction like what Mvula and the dogs had the other day with Noel. It's different from lions because lions tend to walk on roads a lot of the time, and so leopards generally are not going to just be sleeping on a road. It's very seldom that they sleep on a road all the time, and so they move move along roads, and the leopards are lying in the bush, and they kind of just miss each other. And exactly what's happened with the Nkuhuma Pride and Tingana today. The lions have moved eastwards past the point of where Tingana is. So where Ralph is now is actually, they've gone past us, and the chance of them now finding Tingana is probably very slim, unless he goes up into the tree and monkeys start to alarm call, and they then get some sort of indication that he's here, or impalas move here and they start shouting. There's really probably no chance that he's going to be able to actually, well, they're going to be able to find him in this particular area. And at the end of the day, he's going to finish this up in pretty quickly tonight, and then he's probably going to be off on his territorial patrols as normal. Joshua, you're wondering how close Tingana is to Tundi's den sites. As the crow flies, what do you think, Vim? A kilometre? Maybe about a kilometre away, not very far, so that's less than a mile from where Tundi's den is. At the end of the day, he just has to go straight down Mvubu onto the Muluwati and follow the Muluwati along, and he's pretty much there, so he's not very far at all. It would probably take him, I reckon, if he had to go into his striding, normal kind of territorial patrol, I would say it would probably take Tingana 20 minutes at the most to get there, maybe even 15. So it's not very far from Tundi's den, and I wonder if we're not going to see a far more frequent sightings of Tingana. And it happens a lot when you get a female that has her cubs. You tend to see the dominant male actually spends a lot more time in that area. We've seen it with lions and leopard too. I've seen it with Anderson and Tiani. They spend a lot more time in that section while the cub is still fairly new, and they then make sure that it's all safe. So I'm pretty sure he knows there's a cub already, and he's going to then protect this area, and hopefully we'll see a little bit more of him. Now, I think I'm supposed to be linking to Scott. I missed the link completely, but I'm sure you'll have some sort of handsome face staring back at you out of the form of all the boys that are out this afternoon.
Well, we have a handsome cuckoo that we seldom see. He isn't part of the boys' club here at Djuma, but certainly a handsome individual. If it is, in course, a male, it could be a female. Sorry if it is Malede. Now, I couldn't resist stopping to show you this bird, because ordinarily they don't perch themselves out in the open like this. Oh, and that's more typical behavior of the Jacobin's cuckoo. So that may be a first for a lot of you, at least a first good view of them. Often they're flying off and quite secretive. And a big reason for that is probably they're not too proud of their cuckoo behavior, chasing other little birds out of their nests and sneakily laying an egg in there that the other host birds will raise for them. And I know Steph chatted about that a little bit earlier with you, and Steph has also found some other birds that are busy having a bath.
Alright, but we were just busy watching a hornbill having a bath, and of course the same as what happens with birds all the time and every time. As soon as we come over, they fly away. But let's go and have a look at what they were bathing at, because quite often there's an interesting story to tell. This was two red-billed hornbills. The one hornbill is sitting in the tree there. He's busy just preening off his feathers now. And what sand bathing does is it basically dislodges mites and parasites on the skin, which then come to the surface. And then using that long beak, they then preen off the mites that then come to the top of their feathers. But let's go and have a look where they were sand bathing, because birds do practice something called anting. Now what anting is they will go and lie on top of an ant's nest. The ants will crawl into their feathers, they'll ruffle their feathers. The ants get a fright and eject formic acid, which then irritate the mites on their skin, and then the mites come to the top of the feathers, and then the birds scratch them off. But let's see if that's what's been happening over here. Now, you can see all the footprints here. It's quite funny. Here's the hornbill's two legs, and here's his bum and his chest. It's about the most interesting track of a hornbill I've seen in a long, long time. You can see what's actually happened. There's foot 1, foot 2. This is the rump, the tail, the base of the tail. This is where his chest was. Wing 1 on that side, wing 2 on this side, where he scraped the sand up. So that's the wings busy doing this. The body of the bird, the two legs. And there's another similar one here, although not as clear as this one. So for those of you out there who enjoy tracks and weird tracks and signs of animals, log this one. Let me put something next to it for some scale. Log this one as a red-billed hornbill's dust bath, basically. There's where the base of the tail was, the two legs, the chest, where the head was, and then the wings on either side where the bird was flipping it forward. All right, let's go and see what those lions are doing with Rolf.
The Nkuhuma pride, pretty much like Tingana, haven't done much at all since we last saw them. After that excitement of the youngster nearly falling out the tree, well, he pretty much did fall out of the tree, very embarrassingly so, and that little chase of the warthog, they have now gone to ground once more. And just in the interim, I chatted to one of the guides from one of the lodges in the area, and he says that the other 3 Birmingham boys are down in Mala Mala, so they're off our boundary. And thank you to the viewers that wrote in and told us that this is Nkuhuma, the male, that obviously not the animal that we're looking at present, but the male that is with the Nkuhuma pride at present. As Senzo moves over and has a look at him there, that is Nkuhuma, which means authority. So his 3 band of brothers are off down in Mala Mala. So he's taking the safer option of hanging with the girls and waiting for some easy takeaways. Now, we're still trying our luck, as the vultures are, waiting to see if these lions are going to get up anytime soon. You know, it's always a gamble to sit with flat cats, because we could be sitting here for quite a long time and they don't do anything. However, we might move off, and just after we do, they get up and they start doing some fantastic things. So I'm willing to still sit here, see what happens, and, well, even if they don't get up, we've got beautiful light, so we'll stay with them. Annie asking the question, would eating a vulture be harmful to the lions as they eat carrion? Well, I don't think it would be harmful to them, Annie. I just don't think it would be very tasty. However, vultures, opposed to what they look like and what some people think of them. Now, I think Senzo is just going to go over to those vultures there that are sitting in the tree. Now, what a lot of people think is they're dirty, mangy animals, which is quite contrary to what they actually are. They're actually very clean. After they've fed on a carcass, they will generally go immediately down to a body of water and wash their feathers. And they are a lot cleaner than many other birds. As you can see, they don't have feathers on the head and neck area, and this fulfills a couple of functions, one of them being these open patches for helping them find the thermals. Because they're such big, heavy birds, they actually use the updrafts, which are called thermals, and they can actually feel the heat or the cold temperature from these bare patches of skin, and in so doing they know which thermal or which direction to move to stay in the thermals, much like a paraglider does, but he's got a little beeping altimeter which lets him know when he's going up or down. But because the air is see-through, you can't see where these actual thermals are. So the paragliders, the better ones, obviously as they get better, they start to realize which direction to move to get onto the thermals, which then is like an elevator taking them right up into the sky. So that's one of the uses of having that bare patches of skin. Another one, obviously, when they feed on carcasses, they don't get stuck inside. Paula, very good question, asking, do vultures see in color? Now, they do see in infrared or ultraviolet. I can't remember, but I do know that from very high up in the sky, the reason that they can spot a kill or blood is because they can pick out that red color on the ground. So even if a pride of lions had to make a buffalo kill and they drag it under a tree, it's that red color of the blood from the kill site that the vultures actually spot from sometimes over a kilometer or a mile up in the sky. It can literally be up to a mile. And I think that one that just flew over there was indeed a hooded vulture, whereas the rest and the most dominant species that was in the tree there were all white-backed vulture. So I think this hooded vulture feeling a bit left out. H. Lacey asking the question, do vultures kill anything or do they just scavenge? They pretty much are pure scavengers. They're eating carrion and animals that have died, animals that have been killed by predators and any leftovers, etc. So they are not particularly hunters at all. They merely are the cleaners up of the bush and fulfilling a very important part of the ecosystem, because we need these vultures to assist with decomposition. And something that is very interesting indeed is that vultures are both vectors and controllers of anthrax. Now, in the very northern part of the Kruger National Park, they've been conducting a number of studies on vultures to see whether they spread anthrax as far or as largely as a lot of farmers and people in the area believe. But the other thing is that once they feed on an animal or carcass that was infected with anthrax, they digest the anthrax. So in their excrement, it is gone. So that in such a way, they help control anthrax. But obviously, when there's droughts and they go down to water holes and they go and bathe in that water, that is where the spores of anthrax lie, and they can then get that spores onto their feathers. And if they go down to another kill site or another carcass and they feed on that carcass, they then obviously transfer that spores onto the carcass, and in so doing spreading it. So as I say, both vectors and controllers of anthrax, but in the times when they are controlling it, that is absolutely of vital importance, because they help help control the spread of it. So that's something very interesting on vultures, and they're still sitting up here watching these vultures, watching the lions. But as we sit here hoping for the lions to do something, let's go over to Tristan and see if anything's happened with Tingana.
Well, Ralph, I feel like I'm a vulture myself. I'm sitting watching this male leopard in the hope that they will get up and start moving. Well, he will get up and start moving, but so far nothing of the sort. It's quite funny though, he's got a piece of grass that kind of keeps sticking into his mouth that is driving him a bit dilly as well. He's having a tough time. Once he gets away from the flies and the insects, grass goes into his mouth, and keep hearing him coughing and spluttering, but yet he doesn't move his mouth at all. He just keeps putting his mouth in the same place. So not being the cleverest this afternoon, but it's okay. We'll forgive him. When you've got a big fat belly like that, I suppose you can be forgiven for being a little on the lethargic side. The good news is that every now and then I see him glancing up towards the tree, which means hopefully it's now starting to get a little cooler, a little darker, and that maybe, just maybe, he is going to decide now to get up and go. There we go. He's actually up right this second. Are you going to go up the tree, or are you just going to go lie down closer to it? So he keeps doing this. He gets up and, here we go, that's all of about 2 meters that he has walked, and it is a step closer to the tree though, so it's slowly but surely heading in that direction. I would imagine that we will get to a situation where he is going to get up and go into the tree itself. Whether or not it's going to be in time for the end of drive, I'm not quite sure, but he is looking up. He's kind of gazing in that direction now, and so I'm hoping that he is going to head in that sort of vicinity. But what I'm going to do is, because VM's got about 20 bushes in the way of Tingana's face, I'm actually going to reposition us and just go around, and that way we'll have a much clearer view of where he is at the moment. Oopsie, we've got to get it into the right gear first. Sean, so you're wondering about leopards, whether the skin is spotted and what color their skin is. Now, I've personally never shaved a leopard, so I've never seen what is underneath there, but I know that they do not have spotted skin. So they have a situation where They have a coat that is spotted, and underneath it seems as though the skin is just normal, like ours would be. There's no real spots that I know of. Now, I could be completely wrong. Like I say, I've never shaved a leopard, so I wouldn't know, but it seems as though that would be the case. In terms of what color, and Kirsty, you're wondering why not? Well, Kirsty, I'm happy for you to come and show me how it's done, seeming as though you sound very cocky about it and as though that you've done this before. So I'm happy to bring you out after game drive and you can come shave Tingana and see how that goes for you. Hand shave or machine shave? A hand shave, because Kirsty's being cheeky, so she's going to have to use a hand razor. We'll supply her one, especially a blunt one, and we'll see how Tingana decides to deal with a blunt razor on him. Now, I see this vehicle has pipped me because they've now moved exactly where I wanted to go, so that's not ideal at all. So that's not really what we were planning on, but anyway, we'll just try and find ourselves a better spot that we can maybe see, and it might just be the back of his head for now, because like I say, unfortunately the vehicle is gone. Although, are they moving out? It looks like they might be going, so let's just pull out of the way of them and they can then move out, and we'll get back to the skin story shortly. Now, in terms of the actual color of the skin, I'm not 100% sure, to be honest. I don't really know what the color of the skin is. It would be interesting to know. In gashes and things like that, and when they rub their skin and there's no hair left there, it seems to be quite a dark coloration, but that's normally because it's been rubbed raw and that blood then dries and gets that kind of dried blood color. So I would imagine that their skin is probably fairly light in coloration. The hair grows over it, and then we'll see. But I'll have to find out for you. It's a good question, actually. I've never really thought about whether or not the skin is dark or light, but I know that it's not spotted underneath. It's just the fur that is like that. So we're just trying to get out of the way of this vehicle to let them go past. Thanks, Ralph. And then we'll go and position ourselves exactly where I want it to be, which is going to be a perfect view of this male leopard's face. And hopefully he will then decide to get up and go into the tree, because that would be quite wonderful if he did. Still surprised no hyenas have found this. Given the amount of tracks coming in here, given the sound of us moving around in the bush and all the other things, I would have thought that something would have found us by now. So, Philip, yes, it would be, I suppose, cooler up in the tree. There would be a bit of a breeze blowing. The problem with that is that he's already struggling with short breath because of the amount of food in his stomach. It's pushing up on his diaphragm, decreasing the amount of air capacity within the lungs, and so he's having very short breaths. Now you go and lie onto a branch, and that's further compressing that stomach and those lungs even further, and he's going to be even more short of breath. So it's actually more comfortable for him to be down on the ground. Also, this evening it's now cool. There's a cloud cover. It's not in direct sun. You'll find that the grass is probably, I suppose, like anything, when you go and lie on nice green grass, it feels cool, and so I'm pretty sure he's not too uncomfortable from a heat perspective. I think it's more the fact that he's just overly full at the moment that's causing him to pant the way that he is and to take these short, shallow breaths. Being up in the tree, that, like I say, it would compress all of that and it would be a lot more uncomfortable. At the end of the day, also, there's no reason for him to be up for the sake of hyenas or anything like that, and so it's much easier to lounge around on the ground. The only thing that I would have thought he would have gone up into the tree for to get away from would be these flies. Up there where there's a bit more of a breeze, you tend to find that the flies aren't nearly as irritating as what they would be down on the ground. He's also not going to get ants and ticks and various other things, but I suppose if your stomach is full and you can't breathe nicely, then it's every reason to be down on the ground and in the lush green summer grass. But there really is very little left of this carcass. Now that I'm sitting here, it's pretty much done. That's going to be a little appetizer for Tingana. He's going to be on a diet dinner tonight, and he's going to have just a little bit, and then it's going to be finished rather quickly. You can see there's a bit of the stomach, one of the 4 stomachs that's hanging down there by the looks of things. That's full of rumen and a couple of flies as well. So there's actually not too much in the way of meat there, and then it's just 2 legs going up and over and a bit of the pelvis that's left. So that really isn't going to last very long at all. I would imagine that Tingana will chomp that down in the space of about 10 minutes if he eats like he was eating yesterday. Now, while we've had a look at the carcass and a couple of little flies that are on the carcass, Tingana has gone to sleep, and Scotty D is also looking for little small things as he roams around the bush using his own 2 limbs.
Yes, I'm using my 2 little limbs to transport myself around this bush willow tree, and I'm trying to scour it for any sign of any little bugs, but most importantly, what I'm hoping for is a chameleon. I'm having chameleon withdrawals. I love chameleons, and our time spent in the Mara, we really didn't see many. I saw one the whole time I was there, and it looked like it was also a flap-neck chameleon, the same chameleon you get here on Djuma. And I'm hoping we will be able to find you one during the day. It's far easier to find them at night because they're paler shade very often than the tree that they are sitting in. So if you see a pale dead leaf that's the shape of a chameleon, that's a chameleon. So it's often one of the guide's tricks out here that's quite easy to do once you know what to look for. But it's always very impressive when you're driving along and all of a sudden you stop the car and point out a chameleon in the darkness. Your guests often get flabbergasted. So that's what I'm hoping for. We did a short night drive the other night with some of the crew members who don't get out and about as much as the cameraman and us do. So we did search for them, but didn't have any luck. I'm hoping it wasn't that their populations have decreased since the drought. I'm guessing it was just the fact that we didn't have very good luck. But to find one during the day is near impossible. Once Jandre and I managed to find one during a TV show. Jandre spotted it. It was an absolute miracle. But since then, I think that was the first and last time we've spotted one during the day. Unless, of course, they are on the move, moving from one tree to another and heading off across one of the roads. That provides us with quite a good opportunity to see them during the day. Okay. Well, we're going to continue for the last few minutes in the hope that we'll find you a chameleon. The odds are stacked against us, but anything's possible, and we'll be sending you back to Ralph and the lions.
So, while Scott's looking for that chameleon, we've got a little bit of action here, more than we've had in the last half an hour or so. One of the females has just started cleaning herself again. Now, we always just have to watch out when they start doing this, because that yawning and cleaning and stretching are all signs of an imminent move. So, always just carry on watching. However, the rest of them are a little bit less active. They're all doing their best and trying to relax harder than the next. Alright, in the meantime, let's go over to James, who's got a lovely bird of prey to show you.
Well, I don't know how lovely it is, but it is a bird of prey. Now, when it flew off, I got the distinct impression that we were looking at a eagly. But as it sits there, it's kind of stovepipe legs, and I'm looking. Well, the gape does extend pretty much behind the eye. I'm wondering if we aren't perhaps looking at a. It is an eagly. It is one of those two eaglies, but let us see which one I shall consider my investigation. And I'm sorry for the breakup of our picture. It irks me as much as it irks you, I swear. I'm just quickly going to try and find the lesser spotted, because I'm not convinced that it is a steppe. Let me go to the juvenile. White patch.
Yes, folks, so sorry about that. Don't know what happened there, but we're still back with our very lethargic lines. But having said that, there's been a little bit more movement, and we're hoping that we're going to get a bit of action in the last little bit of the show here, even if they just give us a roar. But regardless of whether they do or not, it's always good to spend time with predators and lions and leopard, whether they lying flat on their sides, on their back, or on the move. For me, it's always a privilege to be with these iconic animals and getting to know them a little bit better, and just to see their individual characteristics, see some of the youngsters playing around, especially on the trees and falling around like Ooh, and on the back of this female, I did notice there was a lot of people commenting on this wound. Now, it does look a little bit better than what I'd seen. It's not as raw, even though it is still not a nice looking wound. But it's obviously healing quite nicely, and you see there's almost like that little thin film over the top of it. So for me, it's not as raw as it was. I only saw it on the stream from the other guys, but you see they're coming over and just doing a little bit of reassuring contact with their mates. But that is very good news, that is healing quite nicely. As you can see, she's a little bit tender on that side, and she will obviously not lie on that side, which is a good thing. That will mean that she's be keeping it clean. She's probably been licking it clean, and now it seems to have sealed over a little bit. So yes, and lots of comments coming through that must be quite sore and ouch. Absolutely, but it does look better than what it was, and I must tell you that you will be amazed at how well lions and buffalo can heal after such traumatic experiences and wounds such as that. So I wouldn't worry too much about her. She looks like she's on the road to recovery, and everybody else now seeming to be getting a little bit more active. As I said, a little bit of stretching poses, yawning. And they are all looking quite skinny, folks. Good comments there, and a very good sign that they will be hungry and ready to hunt. So they're starting to get up now, and they are quite close to us, but quite used to the vehicles, quite used to us moving around. So it's absolutely fantastic. I think this line is going to come right past the front of us. So I'll just try and duck out the way that you can see exactly where they are. Look at that, coming right past the vehicle, hey? Very close to us, and what a privilege to be in such close quarters with these amazing animals. Another one coming just to have a sniff of the front of the vehicle here. As she goes past and joins the other two. So once again, there'll be a little bit of movement, and they're not running off just yet, but they're doing that classic stretching poses and getting ready for a night of moving off. Right, so from one group of lethargic lions to Tingana, who's very flat. Let's see what Tristan can tell you about him.
We love. There we go. So unfortunately I've got no comms at the moment, which is not ideal at all. So it's not very, very good. So hopefully we'll get those back at some point, which would be nice. But for now, VM's just going to tell me what's going on. Anyway, Tingana is still busy trying to eat insects. Not that you would think you'd want to put any more inside there that isn't his impala. He seems to look around every now and then, and I heard some impalas just now snorting not too far from us, so maybe that's what he's taken notice of. Every now and then he takes a little glance up to this carcass, and I wonder if he's just thinking to himself, there's too much effort to maybe go up into that area and to try and actually get to those two legs, or if it's a situation where he's going to just be kind of go up and finish, or if he's going to abandon it and carry on. I surmise, though, that Tingana, who is an individual who likes his food, at the best of times will finish everything, but he kind of looks up at it as though, do I really have to go up into that area and to really kind of get those legs and bits of innards? Is it really worth it? I suppose time will tell. At the end of the day, though, unfortunately we're running out of time a little bit, so I'm not sure if he is going to get up there or if he isn't. It's going to be interesting to see. Either way, he's a little bit more awake than he was earlier. At least the eyes are open, and he's giving us a glorious view of him. You can see that big, thick neck and shoulder area. It's amazing, actually, how big his shoulders are when you kind of see him from this angle. And he really has no neck to speak of. That dewlap is kind of gone from the tip of that lip area all the way down two between his legs, so it seems as though everything is now completely thickened. John, so how a leopard gets rid of ticks is by grooming himself. So they'll use his paws, he'll use his tongue. They're quite flexible animals and they can move around and try and get things off and try and kind of use their paws to stroke and pull those ticks off. So it's difficult for them, but they do manage. And it's why you'll see on older leopards, particularly males, is that their ears start to get quite tatty around the edges. That's because ticks get on there, and it's a lot harder to remove them there than anywhere else on the body. That tick we showed you earlier, he'll be able to groom that off quite easily. It's on his shoulder, so it's not too difficult. But the ones on his ears and his face, he'll just try and use his paws and he'll try and just scrape them off and out of that area. And then of course a lot of them will drop off naturally. Once they've fed off his blood and they become bloated, they will drop off and go off. Oh, look at your tongue, you're looking very dopey. That's not ideal, Tingana. You're not looking as hardcore as a male leopard should, is looking very dopey when his tongue hangs out the way it is. Right, so it's getting to that time of the day, unfortunately, where we're going to start thinking about going back home. But before we discuss any of those things, I need to remind all of you that we are doing a rehearsal tomorrow morning. So there will be no sunrise drive tomorrow morning, but there will be a sunset safari like there was this afternoon, and hopefully it will be a busy one like we've had today. So hopefully all of us will be out and about. There are a number of us that are busy working at the moment. Quite amazing to have 8 guides, from considering, and especially to have 5 on Djuma after the quiet period we had in the winter months. It's kind of something to get used to at the end of the day. So it's been nice to kind of have everybody back, and I've certainly enjoyed spending time with Scott again. It's been a long time since I've seen Scott, and you know, we spent a lot of time together when he was at Singita, and so was I, and so it's really been good to catch up with him and all the others that have returned back, and just having the wealth of knowledge between Steph and James and Scott and Noel and Ralph, and the discussions that come out of that is really good. So it's super good to have everybody back, and it's been a wonderful last few days as they've all arrived. But like I say, unfortunately, we're going to start heading back now. Tingana didn't do his trick and climb the tree for us, but he was still absolutely beautiful. It sounds like the Nkuhuma pride were a treat this afternoon, and at least moved around for a little bit and played with their leopard tortoise. And both bushwalks seem to have had a wonderful time on their exploits in the African bush, and James with his rover as well. So from all of us, it's been an absolute pleasure, and from Kirsty and FC, we'll see you all tomorrow on the Sunset Safari. Hope you have a wonderful evening.